Great.
Thanks, Elaine. Handing over to you now.
Yeah, thanks, Mary, and thanks for letting me speak tonight, and thanks for everybody for coming. So I'm just going to, I'll share my screen now. So I'm just really going to talk about our excavation this year that we ran with the volunteers, the Burrenbeo Conservation Volunteers, kind of our community excavation of 2 hut sites in the townland of Ballyganner in County Clare. So just to give everybody an idea, this is our 2nd season of excavating. We did do an excavation last year in the neighbouring townland of Lismoher, where we did a trench through one of these kind of recorded hut sites. And this year we decided to do right beside our site, and obviously in the town and beside it, there was actually 2 recorded hut sites. So we decided to excavate a trench through both of them. So just to give you an idea, where we're located. So you can see we're kind of in the south central Burren area. So just give you an idea that Kilfenora is just here. So we're just up to the northeast of Kilfenora. And just to give you an idea, if anybody knows the area, who knows Newville Church, we're just down to the south of Newville Church. So we're actually quite close. And you can just see here that we had, sorry, is this thing in the way? Just push this, no, put it over here. So you can see there is our 2002 excavation, our hut site was here, and then the 2003 excavation was just kind of just barely about 500 meters to the west of it. So we're kind of close. We're in a very kind of close area. So just to give you an idea of the landscape, this is I wanted us to highlight that there's a lot of caches, a lot of recorded caches in this area. There's a lot of named caches as well. So it just gives you an idea. You can see that all the white circles are circular caches, which are just stone forts. So that's what their caches are, stone forts basically, so stone ring forts. And you can also see that there's rectangular ones as well in this landscape. So you can see I just made any of the squares then have a rectangular cache, and you can just see that our 2 excavations are kind of smack in this sort of intense kind of cache area, kind of a medieval kind of landscape I suppose we're looking at. But there are a lot of recorded monuments in this and in this area, and ones that date back as far as the prehistoric period as well. So I'm just showing you just the caches, just to give you an idea of what's going on. And then here's the 2 excavations. So you see they're actually quite close to each other, and you can see even between them that there's a lot of recorded monuments in the area. These range from obviously the caches to hut sites to enclosures. We've also just up here, we've 2 cairns as well, 2 ancient burial sites, so known as cairns, and that they also have a couple of little hut sites beside them. So there's just a lot in this landscape, even just within these 2 farms that we're actually working within. So these are what the 2 sites look like. From the aerial, you can see we have a larger enclosure, a larger hut site. So this is about 14 meters in diameter. And then there's a second one just beside it, which is about 10 meters in diameter. And just to give you an idea, there is you can see these linear walls coming off of this. So these are known as mound walls, and there's 2 of them. There's one just to the north of our site, and then and there's another one just to the north of the other enclosure. So they're kind of like a matching pair nearly, just the size of them were different, one slightly smaller than the other. So so this is why I decided to excavate both of them. Were we going to find similar activity in both the structures, and were they going to be related to last year's the 2002's excavation? And the real reason why I wanted to check these 2 sites is that the smaller of the 2, this one here, was very similar in size to the one we excavated in Lismoher. So I was kind of looking for a comparative for the excavation from Lismoher, because we did find a good lot of, we answered kind of a few of the archaeological questions we had going into it, but we also found that we had a lot of questions, but created a lot more questions. So, and sometimes when that happens, it's kind of good to go back and excavate more of these sort of hut sites to see what more they're going to tell us. So this is why we did the 2 of these, because I just felt there's 2 of them together, you know, there's got to be some sort of, they're definitely contemporary with each other, and hopefully they were going to be contemporary with my previous site. So this is just a nice view of them. So you can see you have this sort of grass covered. Now you know that there's stones underneath these, so these are kind of stone walls that have been covered in grass, and they're circular in shape, you know, so it's kind of a stone bank, I suppose, with lower down area on the inside. So these are what we kind of classify as these hut type structures. And there's the other one, so you can see one is higher, the bigger one, the mound wall was much higher than the smaller one. So I just felt that maybe we were going to be looking at different types of where these two structures have different activity on the inside. So we went for 2 trenches. So these are the trenches that we excavated. We've got trench 1, which measures 20 meters by 3 meters wide. So that was quite a big trench. And we kind of went through the center of the site. We didn't go directly through the center. We kind of went over to the side of it. And we decided to do a small trench through the mound wall as well to see what kind of relationship that these had to each other. And then you can see trench 2 was a bit smaller. That was only 10 meters long by 3 meters wide. And that went, as you can see, through the kind of center of the site. So that's what we managed to excavate in the 3 weeks. We were only there now for 3 weeks. So just to give you an idea, it was an intense excavation. So there was a lot of people on site. A lot of volunteers came to excavate. So we had a lot going on every day. So these are the 2 sites. So you can see our kind of excavation areas. This was the larger, trench 1 is through the larger structure, and there's trench 2 through the smaller one. So we kind of, and this was kind of our working area. So you can see we had a sieving station on the site where we sieved 100% of the soil from this site, from both trenches. And you can see, you just have to excuse the stone humps that we created, because there was a lot of stone came out of these sites from the mound, from the enclosing area, because they were constructed of stone. And what we found is that they had collapsed as well, so a lot of stone kind of got removed from the site. So we didn't, some of them are very big, so we weren't able to lug them too far off the site. So you'll see a lot of my pictures will have these little stone piles. So just so you understand what those are on the site, that's us basically. And as well, we wanted to return all the stones back to the site, so I didn't want them to go too far, because you have to bring all the stuff back in and fill it back in, and you don't want to be leaving things like that lying around on the farm. And just to give you an idea that this is a working farm, you know, so there's cattle here all the time, nearly all year round. So, you know, it has to, you know, again, the farmer was, the landowner was brilliant to let us come and excavate that amongst working on his farm, you know. So this is trench 1. And you can see our trench more or less lines kind of north-south, north being on this side. And you can see it was quite a big trench. So what we first do on excavation is we mark out our trench, and then we take off the topsoil. And this is what the trench looked like after the first clean down, once the topsoil was removed. So you can see what we exposed straight away, which was the stones from the enclosing area. We found then that we had this little hump of stones on the inside of the structure. And you can see then on the north side, this is the north side, we can see that there was a lot of stone on the north side, much wider spread of stone compared to the south side. And this will be a bit interesting as we go through the excavation. So we did find that was quite extensive, quite wide. So you can see the amount of stone. And the aim of the excavation would be to find the inner face and the external face of this enclosing wall, and to see how well constructed it was. So all the excavation, we took our time at excavating. So everything was done by, you know, troweling and a slow kind of process. And a lot of recording was done between aerial photographs and drawings and illustrations and recordings. So, you know, so it was kind of a very kind of slow, you know, but again, we got a lot done over the 3 weeks. So this is just another view from kind of the north looking across. So you can see again, this is just kind of more or less after the initial the first clean down after the topsoil came off. So you can see, we can more or less start to see where the outer face of the enclosing wall is. So you can see we had a lot of tumble that we had to go through on the inside and the outside of the enclosing area. So as we kind of went along through our excavation, you can see that, you know, as the site, we start tidying it up, and we can start to see the walls starting to form around the structure just here and here. So, you know, and we can see that there was a layer, we did find a layer of archaeological activity inside the structure, and we did get a good bit of activity around the outside, the external parts of the structure. And again, this heap of stones that we had in the middle we were slowly excavating this and recording it. And you can see it starting to form an interesting kind of oval shape as we go along. So just to give you an idea of what we found in Trench 1. So we found obviously the enclosing walls, and we had to excavate the collapsed part of the rubble. So that took quite a lot of time to dig. We found a nice archaeological layer within the center. So these are things I'm just going to talk to you about in the next few slides. We did find a pit within the center, within the kind of southeast corner of it was within the interior of the structure. We did find a crouched burial remains, which was under a cairn of stones. We did find another burial on the site, which was an extended burial, but we didn't actually get around to excavating that. So we didn't completely excavate the whole of the trench. We did find a second cairn of stones that I'll go into, and I'll show you pictures in a few minutes. But we did not get around to excavating that second cairn of stones. And then we did find infant remains, which was outside the structure. And then we did find a lot of artifacts that were outside the enclosing wall and inside the structure. So we did get a lot of information from our excavation this year, so there was a lot found between archaeological features, burials, layers that we were dealing with, and a lot of artifacts. So we have a lot of information to go through. So this just gives you an idea. I've just highlighted the things in different colors. So you can see the blue is the enclosing wall of the structure. The enclosure, of the hut site. Apparently, our enclosure could be enclosure of some sort. And then what I've highlighted in pink is the burials that we know. So we have definitely 3 confirmed burials from the site, 2 of which were excavated, 1 unexcavated, and then there's a possible 4th burial within our trench, just to let you know, which was the second kind of cairn of stones, but we didn't get to dig. The other thing we found as well, which was the pit, and which is just shown here in yellow. So this pit, we only found one half of the pit. The other half extends beyond our excavation area. So the other half is still intact and on the site. We kind of found this towards the end, so we didn't extend the trench to dig at all, but we were able to excavate half of it, and we'll get a good amount of information from that pit. So just to explain the enclosing stone walls of the structure, they didn't have this fantastic outer and inner face. It's very much a mound of stones with some large stones set around the outside, and then kind of smaller set stones on the inside. You can definitely, they're kind of loosely placed, they're kind of large stones with some smaller stones on the inside, but it's not in the sense of a well-structured wall, that would hold the weight of a person on top. We had to be very careful while digging, because these stones could we didn't want to collapse what we knew was the inner and the outer external face of the enclosing wall. So let's give you an idea. Obviously, our trench was only 3 meters wide, so we only excavated 3 meters wide of the wall, but they were 1.4, the south wall was 1.4 meters wide, so that's quite thick, and it was about 40 centimeters high, so it's not very high, but we knew that from when we had surveyed the site, that the wall was going to be lower on the south side than it was on the northern side. So you can see the difference. Even the wall was wider on the north side. I mean, that was 1.58 wide, so a little bit wider. So quite substantial wide wall, a wide wall, and it was just a little bit higher by 0.75 centimeters high. So that was kind of, just shows, a bit of a difference between both sides of the structure, the enclosing wall. So just to give you an insight, I wanted to just explain that we did find a layer of activity, so within the center of our structure. So this is what it looked like when we're digging it. It was kind of like a dark brown, sort of very silty kind of clay silt kind of layer inside in the structure, and this kind of extended more or less the whole of the internal area. And within this layer, it wasn't very deep. it was only about in some areas like 6 centimeters deep to 12 centimeters, so not very deep. And what we appeared to come down onto was the kind of natural gravelly and the bedrock as well. So this layer, you know, was just down on top of this. And within this layer, we found lots of artifacts and lots of animal bones, but we didn't find very much charcoal, only a few kind of fragments of charcoal within that layer. So it was kind of an interesting kind of layer. As it turns out, one of the crouched burial that we had dug actually cut through that layer. So it just goes to show in the archaeological context that that layer was down on the ground before the burial went on into the site. So it just kind of shows that we're kind of telling a story of what kind of activity was there and when the burial possibly went in, you know. But remember, as we're digging this, we didn't know that there was a burial here on the site. So, you know, as you're excavating down layers, you're recording them and you're writing about them, and what you do then later is interpret what activity happened at what point, and you do that on site as well at the same time. So you know, so that, oh God, we're missing a slide. Oh, here it is. So just to give you an idea, the pit then, we found a lovely kind of half the pit that we only got to dig was kind of ovally in shape. It was about just shorter than a meter long, and we could only excavate half of it because the other half extended into the bulk of the trench. So you can see it here. This is before it was excavated. So you can see there was a couple of kind of large stones around the kind of edge of it, and it was filled with a very dark brown, very rich kind of soil, and there was lots and lots of charcoal in this. So this was a great pit for kind of hopefully we'll find environmental material that will tell us a little bit more about the activity on site. And we also got a radiocarbon date from the bottom of this pit that we'll be sending off to give us a really good date as to what period this pit dates to. And as you can see, this is what it looks, it's cut there. You can see the fill of the pit just there. So there was some stones in it, but there was a lot of soil, a lot of charcoal, you know, and from it. So, but we didn't find any initial artifacts. So this pit was located, it's just inside the structure on the southeast kind of edge of our trench. You can just see it there. It's just, I've shown it there now in yellow just to highlight where it was. So it's just inside the enclosing wall. And we did find that obviously some collapse from the wall was on top of the pit, you know, so the pit was there at the time of you know, was there. It wasn't like a feature that came in after. It was obviously there at the same point when they were building their enclosing walls. So the other thing then we found on the site, so then, is the crouched burials, which is one of the burials that we excavated. So I just want to give you an idea. This is what it looked like in this photograph. So you can see where it is. It's sort of at the south end of the interior of the structure. And what we initially found was just a heap of stones, you know, a pile of stones, kind of a little oval mound of stones, loosely kind of set stones. And we were very careful when digging this because we really weren't too sure what we were going to find underneath, you know. There was a very early suggestion by Clodagh that there was possibly a burial there, or I was thinking maybe there was a fireplace or a structure of some sort. But as we dug it down, we did find, as you can see, there was a very low, like the very bottom, it had this ring of large stones at the kind of bottom of it, and very loose stones within kind of the center on top. And we kind of got to this point and it was kind of looking like, oh, what's in here? So we did a little investigation, and of course then we found that there was a burial inside in it. So that completely took us by surprise. Well, me still by surprise. Not some people I'd probably guess that there was possibly a burial there. And so just for anybody who hasn't ever been on excavation before, burials kind of take a bit of time to excavate, and you need to have somebody who knows what they're doing. So there's kind of a lot that kind of goes on when you find burials. Now, I'd always put it into my meta statement, which is part of the paperwork before the excavation, that what would you do if you find a burial? But when you do find burials on site, you have to ring the guards to let them know, the local Gardaí, You also have to ring the National Monument Service to let them know that you found a burial, and then the museum as well. So there's a lot of very official kind of things that you go through when you find a burial. So before you kind of get into the excavation part. But you can see we have what is a crouched burial. So just here's a closer up view. So the burial is within this sort of circular, kind of oval shaped stones. And obviously the cairn was put after the burial had been put in. So just to give anybody an idea, so excavations of burials is kind of you take your time with them because you want to expose as much of the bones as possible to be able to tell you what way the individual was buried. So we have a crouched burial. So for anybody the individual was placed on their left side and their knees are bent. You can see the legs here. The legs are kind of bent up and sort of in a sort of fetal position, and the arms were placed together. The hands were placed together up and under, just under their chin. So just to let you know, here's the skull here. And you see all these little bones, they're the finger bones. So we know that the hands were placed within each other and placed up under the chin. And you can just see now the bones, in fairness, a lot of the bones were in good condition, the legs, the arms and the fingers, but you can see the vertebrae didn't survive very well in this burial, and a lot of the ribs were kind of gone. They were kind of decaying. So you can see this is where the vertebrae should have been, but as you can see, some of them are missing. And then the pelvis is here, and then you can see that this is the right leg of the burial, and then this is the left leg. So so there's one leg lying kind of on top of the other, so kind of crouched into this burial. So just to give you an idea, the burial remains, we're not too sure if the individual is male or female yet. That'll all go to the osteologist. They made kind of an initial thing that it might be a male, not too sure. So if I say he, I'm not too sure at the moment. It hasn't been confirmed if it's male or female, but they're lying in an east-west position. So the head is to the east and the individuals, they're facing south. So that just gives you an idea of what position they're in. And then the other burial that we excavated on the site, which was outside the structure, the kind of north end of the structure, just outside the enclosing wall. But we did find that the remains were under the rubble, the kind of the tumble from the wall. And we did find infant remains of a single infant. This individual, the infant was placed in kind of a northwest, southeast orientation with the head to the northwest. Now these bones weren't in great condition. Really, what remained was kind of the teeth and a few skull fragments and a couple of other small bones, but they were very tiny. Again, we're possibly looking at an individual that was maybe under 3 months old, but again, we'll be waiting on the osteologist to confirm that. So just to give you an idea of the unexcavated features, so what we didn't get around to digging. So sometimes 3 weeks just isn't enough, but then sometimes you also have to say we didn't want to rush anymore, and we had a lot of information already gathered, which I'll run through, you'll see from the artifacts. So we decided what we would do is we would protect anything else that we found, but kind of towards the end of the 3rd week, we did find another burial on the site. So just to give you an idea, I'm just talking about these two features here, just shown in purple. These are the two that we didn't get to excavate. So what we do know is that so we had our burial here. I'll show you. So this is the crouched burial here. And after we'd removed all of that and we were digging out the rest of this sort of layer that we had on the inside of the structure, we did find another burial. So just to give you an idea, I'm moving on now, sorry, very quickly, but this is the second cairn of stones that we found, again in a similar kind of shape, kind of oval shaped stones, but we didn't get to finish digging this. And so we just assuming that there's possibly another burial similar to the one that we excavated under this, but I can't confirm it until it gets excavated. But as we were cleaning up on the inside between the two, we did find that there is another individual buried on the site. And you can see that this one is different to the crouched burial. It's it's got its head is to the west and its feet are to the east. And this individual appears to not be, it's extended. So that means they've been put in lying straight. So it looks to be, again, the size of an adult, a possible adult. So it's different. It's not the same type of burial on the site. You're looking now at two different burial kind of practices, I suppose, or different ways of burying people on our site. I mean, they're quite close to each other. If I just take away, you see this is where the crouched remains were, and this burial is right here. And then obviously the second cairn is over here. So the potential that this burial is in between these two is kind of interesting. But as I said, we didn't excavate this remains. We kind of protected it, and we just felt that we didn't have enough time within the third week to dig it out and to give it the respect that it needed to dig it correct, you know, to give it the time it needed. So we did decide just to protect them as they currently were in place, and to protect the cairn as well. We got enough information and we drew up the cairn, as we said. So if we ever decided to go back, we'd be able to go in knowing what we had to deal with. So just to give you that, Trench 2 then, which was our other structure. There was a lot of stuff going on in Trench 1, and poor Trench 2 didn't get, sometimes we were very busy in Trench 1, but Trench 2 anyway was in the other one. So it was, as we were kind of finding things in Trench 1, we were wondering, was there going to be the same kind of activity in Trench 2? You know, God, you're thinking two sites that are very similar to each other and they're very close. Are we looking at different activity? So as we excavated down Trench 2, you can see that, you know, we're starting to find the line, the inner line of the mound, the enclosing mound wall, and we found the kind of outer line of it as well. And again, just similar to Trench 1, it had a lot of collapse on the inside and the outside. There was a lot of stone taken off of these, a lot of collapse taken off of them. So I always kind of imagined the walls were much higher when they were initially built, you know. But what we did find on the inside of the structure was another kind of, not a very deep layer, but just another kind of soil layer that there was some activity, and this is what it looked like on the inside. So after we took the topsoil off and gave it its initial clean, you can see we have scattering of this sort of dark brown soil that was kind of similar to what we had inside in structure in the Trench 1, but you know, not as deep, not as deep, and kind of, it was kind of seemed to be kind of a bit scattered, you know. It wasn't kind of all in one place. So just to let you know, as we were digging, any artifacts that we found while digging, we gave it a location. And we also gave it a level on the site, so that all that information would be interesting for the later analysis. So again, we found the enclosing wall was 1.9 meters wide, so a little bit wider than the walls in Trench 1, and it was about 45 centimeters height. But this wall, you know, again, had a lot of collapse on it. So and again, we found a very similar layer, kind of not very similar, but a little bit different, but just kind of concentrated in this area here, which was where the layer was. And the artifacts we got from Trench 2 kind of consisted mainly of kind of chert pieces. And we got a couple of iron artifacts and some shale, kind of unusual shale pieces, lots of animal bone, and again, only like 2 or 3 fragments of charcoal. And we didn't find any burials inside in this one. So this one, there is different activity going on here between these two structures. So this was kind of very interesting, because I was wondering, were we going to be dealing with was there more burials over here? But as you can see, when we removed all the kind of archaeological context on the inside, we found that there was no burials. And we even did we decided just to double check and went through some of the natural gravel to make sure there was no burials, and there wasn't. So again, so Trench 2 has its own story. The site has its own story, and we've got a couple of radiocarbon dates that will date for this site as well. But again, just different to what's happening. So just to give you another idea of what else did we find on the site. So we got loads of animal bone, some of it, which was lots of it unburnt, some burnt animal bone, and then possibly cremated bone. I don't know if it's animal or there could be fragments of human bone, not too sure. We will have to send them to the specialist. We got heat shattered stones. You know, we didn't find any evidence of a fireplace or anything, but we did get heat shattered stones. So that suggests that there is some sort of fireplace somewhere. Maybe outside the structures, or maybe just in the part of the trench that we didn't dig. We got, again, just highlighting the kind of lack of charcoal that we got on the site. We did get some. I'm not saying we didn't get any, but the majority of the charcoal did come from that pit. So that's going to be a very interesting feature for the post-ex analysis. We've a small number of burnt hazelnut shells, not a huge amount, I think about 2 or 3. And then artifacts. We have lots of artifacts that we found, which range possibly from the Bronze Age. I'm just saying that tentatively at the moment, because it really needs to be kind of confirmed with specialists, but some of the pieces that look like they could date to the Bronze Age. And then we've stuff that definitely is most likely early medieval in date. So this is just, these are chert flakes and pieces. So this is what it looks like. These are the kind of cherts that we were getting. We have a lot of this. Lots and lots of cherts, and they're just found kind of in lots of different kind of areas. A lot from outside the structure, you know, outside kind of the north and the south, so outside, and then a few from inside as well. So they're kind of scattered. Now we do have a location for a lot of them. So really, once we are able to map them and put them out, we'll be able to see then where the concentration of those cherts are, and that might be very interesting before we go back excavating next year, if we can see, you know, what the concentration and where all these cherts are coming from. And then we have also flint flakes and scrapers. So these were lovely, that the volunteers found. I mean, I really have to credit a lot of our volunteers, because they were meticulous going through their soil and checking. So they did, but a lot of stuff they found while digging, you know, so I really have to commend everybody for looking, because you know, and checking to see, because it's really important about trying to find exactly the location of where you found them. And we found a lot of the flint flakes, these kind of scrapers, were actually outside, and a couple of them were kind of found in very close proximity to each other. I don't want to say, you know, that there was kind of a bundle of them together, very kind of close in an area. So it's kind of an interesting, you know, what's going on the site. We did find a possible chert arrowhead. If there's anybody out there who knows more about arrowheads, can have a look at this for me and confirm it is an arrowhead. It's definitely a chert piece anyway. So this was a beautiful find when we found it. We have a possible hammerstone. That appears to possibly be burnt. Again, we need to get somebody to have a look at this piece, and this is a bit unusual. We got lots of kind of whetstones or hone stones that were used for sharpening tools. So lots of these, and they're made out of shale. So just to give you an idea, you know, a lot of this stuff, like we're in a limestone landscape, real pure limestone landscape, and a lot of the stones we were finding on the site were like either shale or sandstone, and they're not natural to this area at all, you know, so they're bringing these pieces. So anytime we found something that didn't look anything like limestone, we kept it, and it's most likely, you know, we've kept it, and you know, to confirm that like a lot of this stuff is some sort of item that was used for something on the site. So that's what's really important sometimes in an archaeological dig, is to know what kind of landscape you're dealing with, and then you know what kind of stones are most likely brought to the site, because these are shale pieces. A couple of these are definitely probably whetstones, you know, and then but you know that you're not getting these natural, you know, in the locality of the area, you know, so it's really interesting. We did get these kind of random kind of shale pieces. I don't, you know, it's hard to see. Need to get specialists to look at them to see if they're worked. I can't say for sure what they are, but we do have quite a few of these kind of random sort of shale, in different shapes. I don't know what they were used for, but they were definitely brought to the site, you know, and not naturally found there, you know. So these are items. We got these lovely shale kind of nodules. You know, these are kind of natural nodules, but again, you know, brought to the site for some reason, you know, maybe they had a function, you know, it's really hard to know for sure. And again, hopefully, you know, specialists will come back to us. We found this lovely little shale pebble. I'm not really sure that sometimes those nodules have holes on the inside of them, and this pebble looks like it could come from one of those nodules. You know, so again, another interesting kind of find that's been brought. We have water rolled stones on the site, which were sandstone, so definitely brought to the site for a reason. We have these lovely kind of few quartz pebbles that we kept. We have a lovely kind of quartz pieces as well. I don't know if these are worked, but you can see the lovely crystal one here on the left, and this is kind of a hexagon shape, so it's got like 6 sides to it. You know, so I've seen a few of these before that I've illustrated, and some of them look like they date that, you know, again, Bronze Age, kind of prehistoric in date. But again, I'm not a lithic specialist, so we really need somebody to look at those, all of this stuff. We did find a spindle whorl. And this lovely, it's made out of shale, and it's really flat, and it's, you know, really, you know, polished up, and it's got a perforation through the middle of it, as you can see there. So this is possibly to do with wool, and, you know, wool making on this, possibly on the site. Again, you know, I have to keep an open mind. It's what I think it is. Again, somebody might confirm that it might be actually something different. So it's just a lovely find. We did get sent some jewelry. A few fragments, a few pieces of lovely bits of jewelry. We've this gorgeous green glass bead, and you can see how small these are. So again, like, the volunteers found these while digging, and you know, again, so it just shows you how meticulous everybody was on the site. I mean, this is a tiny thing to find. We found this lovely blue toggle. So again, it's some sort of jewelry of some sort, maybe tied into something, like a bracelet or a necklace, or onto clothing of some sort. Again, you know, this is my interpretation, so just remember, and I'm not a specialist, so all of this material will go to the specialists, and they'll be able to tell me maybe a bit more about them, and possibly what date these are. But it looks like toggles, glass toggles, seem to date from the 8th to 11th century. So that's what maybe some of these artifacts date to, but not the stone ones, like the lithics and the cherts could be earlier, possibly Bronze Age. So then we got these tiny fragments, of glass, blue glass. And in fairness to the volunteer who found these while digging, I have to credit, they're tiny. You can see how small they are. They found them. So it was brilliant to get these. So again, maybe this was maybe off of a bead of some sort, and it broke. And then we got 2 bone toggles. So this is made out of bone, so some sort of animal bone. And we didn't get just one, we got 2. I was delighted with these, because, and these were not found, these were actually found on opposite sides of the interior structure of the site. So again, a lovely find. So again, like similar to the blue toggle, was this jewelry of some sort, or tied into something, you know. And then we got, a lovely quartz bead. It's just a little bit hard to kind of see it, but you know, it's a stone quartz. Quartz is stone or crystal, I suppose, of some sort, and it's got a little perforation on the inside. So that was probably used as a bead of some sort, again in jewelry. We did get an antler tine. So these it's a piece off possibly a deer antler of some sort. Whether it's a worked artifact or not, I'm not too sure. It didn't really look like it was worked, but again, it was just a very interesting kind of artifact to find, because we didn't really find any other antler on the site, just this one piece. We got lots of iron artifacts. Well, not lots, I suppose. We got a few. Again, it's hard to say what these artifacts are. They're quite badly corroded. I think these are nails, the top of nails. I think this is a knife. We did find knives from 2 knives from the 2022 hut site that we dug. And then these other pieces, I'm not too sure what they were used for, but they could have been an everyday type of tool. And then the other interesting iron artifacts that we found, which is kind of to do with weaponry, I suppose, or hunting, is a socketed arrowhead. So you can see this is just a reconstruction of one. This is not what our one looks like. I just found something on the internet just to show you. So it's the end of there would have been a wooden shaft in the bottom of it, and it's basically an arrowhead. And we've luckily to found that on the site now as well. So that's a lovely find. And that's kind of the main artifacts from our excavation. Just to explain, like, the volunteers volunteered on our site, and they, I suppose, for their labor, the help of excavating and getting to do one of these excavations is really teamwork and people power. And the volunteers got to experience what it was like to be on what it is like to be on an archaeological excavation, and the processes involved, like the sieving process, the recording of sites, the drawings, the illustrations, the photographs, that there's a lot going on, a lot of drone flying as well, because drones are a fantastic tool now for an excavation. And, and then the physical labor that's involved on an excavation, it's not easy, it's constant working, it's, so just to credit everybody who came on the dig. And, there was some days where it was just really wet. We did get rained off on a day or two. So, we it's that you just have to kind of compensate for that. But again, everybody really worked through it. We had some, just to kind of the community element of the excavation, some very exciting people came. We the landowner came, the McGanns came to visit the site. We had the national monuments down. We had the local Gardaí. That was kind of they had it was very interesting for them. They hadn't ever experienced what to do with our archaeological remains on a site, so that was very interesting. We had the osteologist who came as well. So I have an osteologist that I would work with when it came to finding human remains, who wasn't expecting a phone call from this excavation, I can tell you, and was very surprised to hear we had human bones. Because I'm going to be honest, I wasn't expecting there to be burials on the site. I had hoped, my aim was that we were going in to find some sort of habitation site. But again, it just goes to show you, as an archaeologist, you never know what to expect on a dig. You never know what's going to be under your feet. You go in thinking one thing, and then sometimes the archaeology just tells you a whole different story, or you just can't. You get what you find, you get what you dig, and you learn to deal with whatever surprises are thrown your way. We had a couple of kids come out on one of the Sunday excavation. They came for a couple of hours to experience. Some of these were the local kids in the area, and then we also had a visit by the local priest, who's very interested in archaeology as well. So it was a very exciting dig. I really enjoyed it myself. There was a lot of kind of aspects to the excavation as an archaeologist that challenged me as well on the site. I didn't have a cool head every minute of the day. It took me a while to get get grips with that there was burials on this site. So just to give you an idea, what's going to happen now is that all the material we find will eventually go to specialists. So the osteologists will look at the human bones, the zoo archaeologists will look at the animal bones. So there's this huge story, and all those artifacts will go to the lithics is the person who look at all the stone artifacts, and the bits of jewelry will go to the glass, the glass specialists. So there's this whole story still to be told from this site. I'm just giving you what we found. I'm not trying to interpret too much, because I might think something and then somebody else will tell me, no, it's something else. So as an archaeologist, you just sometimes have to wait, to be told and what things are. So radiocarbon dates are really important for the site, because as we were digging and found the crouched burial, we assumed that, potential that this was prehistoric in date. So what we did was, I got 3 items to radiocarbon date. Now only one of them is back, and the other 2 probably won't be back till before Christmas. So what I plan to excavate from this year's excavation, what I plan to date, is the tooth from the crouched burial, a piece of charcoal from the pit, and then I got a bit of animal bone from under the enclosing mound wall. So we did excavate out some of the wall, because my key was really this year's excavation to find something secure to possibly date the wall, or to give us an idea if there's earlier activity on the site. So who knows what the dates will come back. But I do have the crouched burial date, which is very fascinating. I got a rush done on it, and so the date for the crouched burial, which was a surprise to a lot of us, even though I was beginning to think we were looking at early medieval, all right, but it's 700 to 880 AD. So again, it's an 8th to 9th century burial. So again, it puts us in the early medieval period in Ireland. So it was just really interesting. It kind of, I'm going to be honest, I'm not an expert in medieval, so I have to learn a lot myself now. So I'm in the books. I only got this date about a week and a half ago. So it's very new information to me. But I just wanted to give you an idea of now, before I go into the next bit, what I think is possibly happening on the site there's lots of questions that still need to be answered. So we create a lot of questions with the aim to try and get answers to them. Is the site an earlier site that was used then later for burials? So is it like, is there Bronze Age activity on the site, or, you know, and then was the burials later? So do they come along later and use the site for burials? So these are questions that I need to answer. But at the moment now, I know that there's burials on the site. I don't know, is the enclosing wall dates to the medieval period, or could it be an earlier site? So these are all the questions we have to ask. And when I look at the artifacts from the site, the lithics have a story to tell that are possibly not related to the burial. So there is a suggestion that there could be earlier activity on the site, but whether the enclosing wall is associated with that earlier site and then the burials are later. So just to give you an idea, I was just reading Elizabeth O'Brien's books. She's done fantastic work on burials from the medieval period and the Iron Age as well. So just to give you an idea of what was happening in that kind of, you know, 8th/9th century, or, you know, 7th century. So she just says up to the end of the 7th or early 8th century, burials in Irish monastic cemeteries were reserved for clerics, patrons, and high-ranking individuals. So what was everybody else doing? While the laity were then generally buried in familial cemeteries, which could then contain both pagan and Christians. And then just also, it was also, she mentioned this, that the 7th and 8th century, which saw the emergence and consolidation of Ireland of new and powerful regional dynasties, coincided with the final phase of burial in ancestral boundary furtas. So just to give you an idea of what a furta is, a boundary to a territory was marked by a furta, and furtas are ancestral grave mounds, or a collection of grange mounds together, or a collection of burials in a single mound. Now, I don't want to get ahead of myself and assume that that's what we have. It's just what we possibly are looking at, is that you're looking at either a site that was constructed as a furta or a burial site, or a site that was earlier and then possibly used as a kind of family burial ground, you know, as a family cemetery. So that's what we could have. Again, answers that still, as I said, as archaeologists, we end up finding, when we go digging, we find we have more questions to answer. So just to give you an idea of what this burial kind of seems to be fitting into, this is what might be happening on our site. So I just wanted to give you an idea, just to go back to the 2002 excavation as well, which I have a radiocarbon date from, again, another layer of activity, you know, another archaeological layer inside that structure. Again, not very deep, you know, only about 12 centimeters as its deepest. That has been dated, and that has a early 7th century date. And as you can see, then our second site, the only date I currently have is the burial at the moment. So could we also be looking at a structure that dates to the 7th century and then later used in the burials? So it's all very interesting. And for a landscape like this, at the moment, these two sites that we dig is starting to put together information, you know, as to what period of time we're dealing with. You know, again, it's a landscape. Just to explain, between the two sites, there is an old, probably a prehistoric cairn burial here. So it just goes to show there's a lot of activity in this area, and these two sites now are just going to add to the archaeological record of what's going on, possibly as well telling us what these hut sites were used for. I mean, we have lots of hut sites in the Burren area, and now I'm starting to look at them and just kind of opening up more questions as to what the other hut sites are in, you know, the other townlands, you know. So, but anyway, I'm going to leave it there, but I just have a lot of people to thank. I have the landowner, the McGann family. I really have to commend them for allowing us to dig on the site. You know, at the end of the day, the landowners really are key, you know, because you really can't dig without their permissions, and we would not have found a wealth of information without their permission to dig, and they had to put up with us. As I said, it was a working farm, and to put up with us for the 3 weeks. So I really have to say a huge thank you to the landowner, and also to the Hines family as well, because that was a neighbouring farm who allowed us access through their farm as well to get to our site. So again, you know, a huge thanks. You know, I can't even say enough about the Burren Conservation Volunteers and Burrenbeo Trust, who organised all the volunteers. I mean, again, the work was just phenomenal of what the volunteers did and the time that they took. And I mean, it was just a fantastic crew to work with, you know, and they were meticulous and they were interested, you know, and we had lots of conversations on the site, you know. So, and as I said, I'm only giving the information as I understand it, you know. So as again, I'd say I'm not an expert in all aspects of archaeology. I just give what I know and what I've learned. And I, as an archaeologist, I find I'm learning new things all the time. Just want to also say thanks to the Royal Irish Academy for the funding, because they funded the excavations this year and last year's excavation. And then the FMA program scheme is funded by the National Monuments. And then I also want to thank the Burren program. And then Acres, Burren, Aaron, which is now the scheme that we're going to be working directly with. And then also to AMS, because they came out and marked my trenches up for me. And that was just amazing work, because doing that work by hand can take a while. So I want to say thanks to AMS. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there, and thanks a million.
Wow, thank you so
Sorry,
much.
have I gone on? Oh God, 5 to
Not at all. That was so interesting. Thank you so much,
me.
Elaine. I really, really enjoyed that. It was brought me right back to the summer, to early summer, and I can't believe that burial wasn't prehistoric. But it's equally amazing that it's 8th to 9th century. Anyone who wants to put in a question or two into the Q&A, please do, or into the chat. I'll just have a quick look at them here. What conclusion do you draw from the scarcity of charcoal, or do you draw any conclusion from that?
No, just that there probably wasn't any burning on the site. In that layer, it's hard. My previous site was the same. So it's again, it's something, it just means that there probably wasn't any burning on the site. You know what I mean? So like I was hoping to find fireplaces, and last year's one we didn't, just very small. Like now when I say my fragments are small, I think last year we found maybe 40 up to about 50 pieces. So yeah, so it's something that needs to be looked at. Why so little? But that pit has a lot in it. So there's a concentration of charcoal in that pit. So whatever pit, if that pit could be an earlier date, or is there just not much burning going on inside those structures during the medieval? Were they even used as habitation sites as well? So that's a story itself. So it's a good question.
Absolutely, yeah. And another question there was, what significance do you attach to the pit? Do you, this time, I suppose, without any analysis, it's hard to say what.
Yeah, I'm dying to find out the date of the pit. I will be honest. To find a feature like that, I didn't find any pits on the previous one, and when I found it, I was very excited, to be honest with you, because you have something that was dug in. Now, of course, we had the burial that was dug into the natural. The pit is also dug into the natural, and there's secured material in that pit that I can send off to dating. And I'm going to be honest, we found it on Thursday. We were finishing on Friday. I excavated it out quite quickly, and I took all the soil home. We didn't sieve it. So I don't know what's in it, and it's yet to be sieved. So we'll do environmental sieving on it, but I am kind of excited. Is that pit going to be completely different in date, or is it going to be dated to the burials? It'll be very interesting to see what comes out of it. Did you feel when you were excavating it that it might be contemporary with the mound walls, or was it cut into the mound walls? No, so it could be contemporary with the mound walls. They're at the same level, and the slippage from the mound wall is on top of it. Yeah. So I'm, so depending what date it comes out at, if it's, again, I don't want to assume it's earlier. I might find then it's like 11th century. Yeah. But to be honest, I don't know what's going to come out of it, but I think it'll be a very exciting feature to dig, because again, as I said, we've taken all the soil home and we've got secured stuff from the bottom of it. Because sometimes when you're dealing with layers, you're not too sure, has stuff been trampled in or stuff being thrown away. But a pit is something that was dug and then they put stuff into it. And that's what we have, a single fill in that pit. So that it was opened up and then filled in pretty quick. So it's going to be an interesting one. Yeah, fantastic. I was also going to ask you, what are you most looking forward to about going back next year? So well, fingers crossed for the funding. So we'll go back next year, but we're going to dig a trench in the kind of opposite direction. So what we'll do is we will excavate out, hopefully my aim now is fingers crossed, we'll excavate out the second cairn and find out is there a burial under that, and then to excavate the extended remains to see what way that individual was definitely buried, and then to date them, because I think for that period of time, are you looking at an extended burial that dates to the same date as the crouched one? And can you interpret, because that looks like an early Christian burial, or is it later? And is it to do with these family verses, you know, these kind of burial sites? So the burials are an important aspect of the excavation that have only become important because we found them there. But also I want to be able to go back to investigate the mound of the enclosure in a bit more detail next year, because I'd like to kind of, we excavated a section through one mound of the mound wall, but I would like to, and then I want to, if we do have what looks like to be Bronze Age activity, to try and pick that up again. So those two dates might be very interesting before we go back next year, you know, what we're going to be dealing with. Multi-period site, I suppose, maybe.
The concept and ideas of FERTAs is completely new to me, but I find it really, really interesting. It reminds me a bit of, you know, the bog bodies being buried at the proposed townland boundaries, and the idea as well that like there might be a pagan laid down beside a family member who's a Christian. And it kind of, you know, your mind starts going, because obviously one of those burials was crouched, it wasn't lying in the typical Christian east-west prone fashion, while another was. So there's lots and lots of food for thought. But thanks so much, Elaine, for that fantastic talk. And this talk will be up on YouTube afterward for anyone who wants, and can't wait to go back next year. I'm really looking forward to it. Thanks again to all the Burrenbeo Conservation Volunteers. We couldn't do it without you. And I hope you enjoyed listening this evening.
No worries.
Okay, thanks very much, everybody. Good night.
Thanks, everybody. If there's any questions, is that it? We've there's no good to go.
I think we're good to. I think we're good to go. There's a few other questions there, but it's 9 o'clock. Do you want to take one more question?
Well, no, just if anyone wants to, they can contact me. You know.
Okay, perfect.
If they want to contact the Burrenbeo Trust,
absolutely, yes.
And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. You know, because look, it's new to me as well. As I said, I've only just learned about verses. You know, so again, you know, but just if anyone else has any other things that they want to ask me, there's no harm.
Absolutely. Info at
contact Burrenbeo Trust and get my email anyway. So
yeah, please do. Okay, thanks again, Elaine.
All right, great, Maury. Thanks.
Night.
Night.